So Amalika could be in reference to the actual people themselves, or could be in reference to the giants or those that were actually ruling the kingdom. Another point that we also want to keep in perspective is that the ark, because it was a manifestation of Allah's power and help, He did not want it in the presence of those who disbelieved, which is why whenever a people worshipping idols took hold of it, they were seized upon by plagues and all types of unsightly devastation. And in the end, the Ark of the Covenant, or the Tabut, wound up back in the presence of the children of Israel. In examining the explanation that we gave for the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant, someone who has thought clearly about the Ark of the Covenant could rightly say that its structure sounds box-like. It is so many cubits wide by so many cubits tall, and the image that may come into our mind may be of a box-like structure with a top that opens and items that go inside. The question is, was there anything inside of the Ark of the Covenant? Because it says, in it, if we look at the passage in context from the first verse that we quoted, it mentions that there were the following things in the Ark of the Covenant, which is in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 246 to 248. It says that it had the sakina, the tranquility in it, as well as the remnants of what the families of Musa and Harun left behind. So we would like to know, what exactly was all of this, and how can we know what it was? Well, we have no further than to go to the Sahaba, radwanallahu alayhim, who will give us detailed information on this topic. It has been mentioned above that the remnants of the families of Musa and Harun are in the Tabut, whereas in fact there are a number of things in the Tabut. Let us look at them first. The first thing that is in the Tabut is the Sakina. And this word carries the meaning of tranquility in Arabic, or to be still, to be tranquil, to be peaceful. But in this context, it is referring to some sort of light or power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in there from His mercy and His glory. And when the top was taken off, it will be manifested to the people. Manifested, and it would drive terror into the hearts of the enemies of Allah. The second thing that was inside was the staff, or the rod of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. As we know of in Surah Al-A'raf and other surahs, the rod that he threw down that transformed into a large serpent, the rod that he used for striking the rock and showing the miracle of the 12 springs, the miracle of the rod that he used for touching the water and the water actually parted, and then when he made the motion of the rod, he motioned downward with the rod that the waters crashed in and destroyed the army of the Pharaoh. This is the rod of, or the staff of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. That was also inside. The third thing inside is there were the tablets that Musa alayhi salam was given by Allah to preach to the children of Israel. These tablets that he had brought, which we had mentioned earlier, these particular tablets had the information that Allah had willed for the children of Israel to implement and act on in their daily life. The fourth thing that is contained inside of the Ark of the Covenant is a leftover of the manna that Allah sent down to the children of Israel. So Allah kept that in there as a sign of what He had done for them. He had fed them from above, from His mercy. The fifth thing that was in there was the amama, or in English what you would call the headdress, as well as the cloak of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam's older brother, the Prophet Harun alayhi salam. So these 5 items were contained within there. This information has been given to us by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu in his tafsir Tanwir al-Maqbas, pages 45 to 46. Zadul Masir fi Ilm al-Tafsir, pages 152 to 153. And the Sahaba and the Tabi'een that have been quoted in Zadul Masir are Wahab ibn Munabbih, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Muqatil, Mujahid, and others, radwanallahu alayhim ajma'een. Now comes the next part. Is the Ark of the Covenant still extant among us? Was it destroyed? Where is it? What's happened to it? This almighty sign of Allah that has been sent to the children of Israel, they don't know where it is. Where is it? Indeed, the Ark of the Covenant still exists. It has not been destroyed. It is with us somewhere on the earth, preserved and well. When the Temple Mount, which is also known as Masjid al-Aqsa, was destroyed, all that was inside of it was carried away with the Babylonians or burnt to the ground. Now this took place when the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar came down from Babylonia and wreaked havoc on the city. Now it depends on how exactly you're going to class the destruction of Jerusalem, because there were two invasions that took place when the children of Israel were in the land of Palestine. The first wave of devastation was in the year 586 or 587 BC, in which Judea was laid siege to, and the actual utensils and other things in the temple were desecrated. But there was a second desecration that actually took place earlier than that, which I suppose you could call the first desecration, which was in 596 or 597 BC. So you could call the first desecration took place in 596 or 597 BC, in which Judea was invaded and the Temple Mount was attacked and some of the utensils and other things were carried away. And then in the year 586 or 587 BC, the actual temple itself was devastated. The land of Palestine was devastated, and the children of Israel were taken into what would be known as the Jewish captivity. The temple that was destroyed there had stood for 410 years. 410 years. However, with this said, the Taboot was not destroyed and continued to live on. Now, there are many theories and stories on where it is at the moment, how it came to be located in its new home, but we will actually deal with that later. For now, we want to focus on the fact that it is still extant among us and that it is somewhere on earth in our midst. By saying that, we also have to address another issue, and that is that many have claimed that the Ark of the Covenant, the Taboot al-Ahad, has been found. There have been a number of claims made by those who believe that they found this precious item. However, none of them has been decisive or objectively examined where all doubt could be dispelled. In addition to this, none of these items contain the properties or unique characteristics that the Taboot is to possess. Let us take some examples of some claimants to the legacy of the Taboot. First, we have a Jewish as well as a Christian community in the city of Axum in Ethiopia, claiming that they have the Taboot. And they give the measurements of the Taboot, and the measurements are sound according to what has been related in the Qur'an as well as what has been related in the Bible, because Jews and Christians also believe in the Ark of the Covenant. However, there are a number of problems. The first problem is that the story of how the Ark of the Covenant got to Axiom, Ethiopia is apocryphal in itself, in that the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, went to see Sulaiman, the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. And the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam gave her a banquet and told her that if she could actually spend the night at the palace, and that if she touched anything without asking permission, she would have to share his bed with him. And so, during that whole process, she watched a night of festivities without touching anything, without permission. And, however, she ate a very salty dish of olives and other things, and they had a lot of salt in them. When she returned back to her room, the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, later in the night had a very strong desire for water. And of course did not ask permission when drinking that water, so she had to share the bed with the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, in which she was impregnated. And when she returned back to Ethiopia, she had a son by the name of Menelik, who went back and stole the Ark of the Covenant from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and took it back to Ethiopia. These stories are actually apocryphal for many reasons. Firstly, the children of Israel are going to notice if the centerpiece of the Temple Mount, the actual Holy of Holies, what is in the inner sanctum, has been stolen, because every day the high priest used to come there. Number two, it is very difficult to get into the Holy of Holies without being a priest yourself. And Menelik would have been charged as being an illegitimate child, out of wedlock. So there would be no way of him getting in there. And there are many accounts of those who were born out of wedlock being devastated when coming near the miracles of Allah. Number three, this story again is apocryphal and is a blemish on the spotless record of the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, so it must be rejected. In addition to that, the Ark does not have any of the properties. They have not mentioned that in it are the tablets of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam. They have not mentioned the manna that's supposed to be in there. They have not mentioned the amama of the Prophet Harun alayhi salam. They have not mentioned the rod of Musa alayhi salam. Therefore, we would have to dismiss that as being the Ark. The next is the claim that it is actually buried at Mount Nebo, which is in the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. If the Ark was buried at Mount Nebo, make no mistake about it, there would have been archaeologists digging, searching frantically for it until it was found, and it would have been found in a museum not long after that, to study it, to find out what exactly it was. A number three theory that some people have is that it will actually be in the pyramids of Egypt, and that they have found it buried with one of the pharaohs. That poses a number of problems, because first of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it had been buried with one of the pharaohs, Allah's curses would have fallen upon that kingdom for possessing it, as it had the other nations that had taken hold of it from the children of Israel. A second important point is that the Ark that they are claiming that they found has none of the items in it, nor does it have the miraculous properties of the Ark of the Covenant. So that as well must be rejected as a contender to be held as the Ark of the Covenant. Finally, it's asked, will the Ark of the Covenant ever be found? Will it ever be found? Indeed, the Ark of the Covenant will be found. It is one of the signs before the day of resurrection, and it will be found and brought out before the day of resurrection. According to historical records from Ibn Abbas and others, the Tabut is presently near the location of Lake Tiberias in today's Palestine.